Imagine the lights go out, not because you flipped a switch, but you have no choice. You look around, confused, there's no load shedding. You wonder what could have happened. Then it hits you. You've been scammed. You check your latest electricity bill and see it's nearly doubled overnight. Your paycheck hasn't gone up, but the cost to keep the lights on just did. For millions of South Africans, this is soon to be the harsh reality. It's not just about the lights going out, it's about whether you can afford to turn them on in the first place. This is the story of Eskom's massive price hike and the devastating impact it will have across the country.
Eskom has asked the National Energy Regulator of South Africa for a whopping 36% increase in electricity tariffs for the 2025 financial year. This will be followed by 12% for the 26-27 financial year and an increase of 9% for 2027-28 financial year. If approved, the
For the millions already struggling to make ends meet, these hikes are more than just an inconvenience. They're driving people to their breaking point. They impact more than just the affluent members of society. They hit the hardest where it hurts the most. Poor households that are already cutting back on basic necessities. And yet Eskom claims that these hikes are necessary. They are a matter of survival for the utility itself. But it wasn't always like this. There was a time when Eskom was seen as one of the best performing utilities in the world. From 1994 to 2006, electricity prices in South Africa were very affordable, and increases were closely tied to inflation. It was a system that worked for the people, for businesses, and for the economy. Back then, power was something you could depend on, both in availability and in cost. For over a decade, Eskom kept the country's lights on without burdening South Africans with crazy prices. But that all started to change. In 2007, things took a sharp turn. That's when load shedding first hit the country, and South Africa's once reliable power grid started to crumble. But the real problem wasn't just failing infrastructure. It was something far worse: corruption and mismanagement on a large scale. This was the era of state capture, and Eskom was at the heart of it. During this time, Eskom paid crazy amounts for basic supplies: 238,000 for a mop, a single mop, just imagine, and 80,000 for knee guards. Inflated salaries and a bloated workforce, combined with reckless spending, drained Eskom's resources. All of this wasteful spending led to inflated operational costs that have now been passed on to you, the consumer, in the form of rising electricity bills. But the true cost of corruption isn't just in the numbers that I've mentioned and all the money spent. It's in the lives of people who now have to choose between keeping their homes lit and feeding their families. The numbers actually tell a very shocking story. Back in 2006, Eskom spent about 147,000 to generate a single gigawatt hour of electricity. By 2023, that cost jumped to over 1.5 million per gigawatt hour, an increase driven by years of corruption and inefficiency. If Eskom had been managed properly, that cost would be closer to 380,000 per gigawatt hour today when adjusted for inflation. This means that right now, South Africans are paying 75% more for electricity than they should be. That's the real hidden cost right there. Every time you pay your electricity bill, you're not just paying for power. You're paying for decades of mismanagement, corruption, and greed. If this is not a scam, then tell me what it is. It's easy to talk about numbers, but what do these price hikes really mean for the average South African? Let's break it down. In 2010, the average household would have paid around 1,000 for electricity each month. By 2024, that same household is paying almost 3,000 rands a month. And if Eskom's latest price hike goes through, that figure could rise to over 4,000 rands a month by 2025. But it's more than just a line item on a bill. These hikes are really a growing burden that touches every part of life. For many South Africans, this is the difference between keeping the lights on and putting food on the table. Families are being forced to cut back on essentials, less money for groceries, school fees, and healthcare, just to cover the rising cost of electricity. And it doesn't stop there. This ripple effect spreads to businesses too. Take a small grocery store for example. It will now cost them more to keep their refrigerators running, so the price of food inside those fridges has to go up to cover the cost. Public transport is also hit hard. Trains that rely on electricity to operate will see higher costs, and unfortunately, that will get passed on to the commuters in the form of fare increases. In the end, it's the everyday consumer who bears the brunt. The cost of goods and services is closely linked to electricity, and as those costs rise, so does the cost of living. This is more than just an electricity crisis. It's a crisis that impacts every aspect of life in South Africa. Eskom claims that these price hikes are necessary. They argue that what they are doing is cost-reflective pricing. In other words, the price you pay for electricity should reflect what it costs Eskom to produce it. But there's a problem with that logic. The cost of producing electricity at Eskom is already inflated due to years of corruption and inefficiency, and now they're trying to recover their financial losses through consumers. They've also pointed fingers at the government's inability to rein in delinquent municipalities that owe Eskom billions. But instead of going after those debts, Eskom is raising prices for everyone. And while Eskom argues that these hikes are essential to prevent further government bailouts, the truth is that the real burden is falling on ordinary South Africans, especially those who can least afford it. Economists, including government officials, argue that these price hikes will only hurt South Africa's economy, pushing more people into poverty, and yet Eskom insists that it has no other options unless they want another government bailout. As prices continue to rise, more and more South Africans are being pushed to look for alternatives. Solar is becoming very popular, not just as a green solution, but as a financial necessity. But here's the catch. What happens when the people who can afford solar leave Eskom's grid? The pricing debt spiral. As more people move away from Eskom's grid, the utility will be left with fewer paying customers. To make up for the lost revenue, they will be forced to raise prices even further, driving even more people away. It's a vicious cycle that could deepen Eskom's financial crisis even further. The government knows Eskom is too big to fail, but the proposed price hikes are too big to ignore. They've talked about stepping in to cap price increases, but so far, no substantial action has been taken. And while the idea of cost-reflective pricing might sound reasonable, it won't solve the core issues that have driven Eskom's prices to these levels. We've been paying the price for Eskom's corruption and mismanagement for many years. I think it's time now to demand a better deal. South Africa needs a power utility that serves the people, not one that bleeds them dry. The truth is, we should be paying 75% less for electricity. And if Eskom was properly managed, we wouldn't be facing these hikes. So the next time you look at your electricity bill and wonder why it's so high, remember, you're not just paying for electricity, there's a lot more that you're paying for.